I want to show you something. Pull up your AWS Cost Explorer right now. Find the oldest EC2 instances in your account. Check when it was last right-sized. I will wait. If the answer is never or more than 6 months ago, you're not looking at an engineering problem. You're looking at a neuroscience problem. And today I'm going to teach you exactly what it is, why it happens, and most importantly, how founders, CTOs, and engineers can use this knowledge to build systems that fight it automatically. This is status quo bias. And once you understand it, you will never look at your AWS bill the same way again. Before we get into today's topic, let me tell you who I am and why you should care about anything I say on this channel. I'm Abhi. I spent 5 years working as a data engineer in FANG level tech environments. While most engineers around me were focused on performance and scalability, the things that get you promoted, the things that get celebrated in sprint retros, I became curious about something else entirely, the cloud cost behavior. Not just the bill, the behavior behind the bill. Why some architectures stay efficient as they scale and why others quietly become expensive in ways nobody notices until the number is already too big to ignore. I started studying it not from a FinOps textbook, from watching real systems, real teams, and real decisions under real pressure. And what I found was this. The reason cloud costs grow the way they do is not technical, it is human. It is the decision engineers make when they are moving fast. The configurations nobody goes back to revisit. The defaults that feel safe because they were already there. Now I shared what I learned. Not tips, not generic AWS advice. Just honest insights about how cloud costs actually work and the human behavior behind them. This channel is for founders, CTOs, and engineers who use cloud every day and want to understand both sides of that equation. If that sounds like you, subscribe and stay for today's video because what I'm about to show you is going to change how you look at your AWS bill permanently. What is status quo bias? In 1988, two researchers, William Samuelson and Richard Zeckhauser, ran a series of experiments. They gave people financial decisions to make. In one version, there was no default option. Everything was a fresh choice. In the other version, one option was labeled as the current default. Here's what they found. People chose the default option far more often, even when the other options were objectively better. Not because they were lazy, not because they were uninformed, but because the human brain is hardwired to treat change as a loss. And we already know from loss aversion that losses feel twice as painful as gains feel good. So the brain does a simple calculation. Change equals risk of loss. No change equals safe. Stay put every time. Now here's why this is the most expensive cognitive bias in cloud computing. How status quo bias shows up in AWS. AWS knows about status quo bias. Every default setting in every AWS service was chosen by AWS, not by you. And those defaults are not chosen by your cost efficiency. They are chosen for ease of setup and maximum capability. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Service by service. EC2 instance types. When you launch EC2 instance, the console defaults to T2 micro in free tier. But in production, most teams select whatever instance type their colleague used last time or whatever tutorial recommended. Nobody revisits it. Status quo. RDS, default storage type is GP2. GP3 is 20% cheaper and faster. It's been available since 2020, but most RDS instances are still on GP2. Why? Nobody changed it. Status quo. SageMaker, default compute for training jobs is on demand. Spot instances are 70% cheaper. One checkbox to enable. Most teams never check it. Status quo. S3, default storage class is standard. Intelligent tiering exists. Lifecycle policies exist. Most buckets have neither. Status quo. Lambda, default memory allocation is 128 MB. Most teams set it to 512 MB or 1 GB because it feels safer. They never reduce it. Status quo. Are you seeing the pattern? Every single one of these is a technical failure. It is a cognitive one. The brain chose the path of least resistance, and AWS charged you for it. The dollar cost of status quo. Let me put a number on what status quo bias is, costing a typical Series A digital health startup. RDS on GP2 instead of GP3, 20% overspend on a DB R5 2X large, $140 per month. SageMaker training on demand instead of spot instances, $1,548 per month. S3, everything is on standard. No lifecycle policy, $800 per month. Lambda over allocated memory across 20 functions, $300 per month. EC2 instances never right-sized since launch, $600 per month. Redshift running 24/7, no pause schedule, $1,200 per month. Total, $4,588 per month. For every year, it is $55,000. Not from bad decision, from no decision, from the default, from status quo bias running unchecked in your infrastructure. How to teach your team to fight it? So now you understand what it is and what it costs. The question is, how do you fight a cognitive bias that is literally built in your brain? You do not fight it with willpower. You fight it with systems. Here are 4 specific systems founders, CTOs, and engineers can implement it this week. System 1, the default challenge meeting. This one is for CTOs. Once a quarter, run what I call default challenge meeting. Pull up every major AWS service your team uses. For each one, ask one question. Was this meeting chosen deliberately, or is this the default? If the answer is default, it goes on the review list. You're not saying the default is wrong. You're saying the default was never consciously chosen. And unchallenged defaults are where your money goes. This one meeting once a quarter typically finds $2,000 to $5,000 in recoverable monthly spend every time. System 2, the optimization checklist. This one is for engineers. Build a cost optimization checklist into your team's infrastructure PR template. Every time someone creates or modifies an AWS resource, the PR template asks 3 questions. Is this the right instance type for this workload? Or is this the right storage class for the data access pattern? Does this resource need to run 24/7 or can it be scheduled? These 3 questions take 2 minutes to answer. They prevent status quo bias from being baked into new infrastructure from day one. You're not fighting the bias after the fact. You're blocking it at the point of decision. System 3, the anomaly alert. This one is for founders. Set up AWS cost anomaly detection. It is free. It monitors your spending patterns and alerts when something deviates from the norm. But here is how to use it specifically against status quo bias. Set a monthly budget alert for every major service, not just the total. When SageMaker goes up 15% month over month, you get an alert. When S3 storage grows 20% without overspending a user growth, you get an alert. The alert forces a decision, and forced decision breaks status quo bias because the bias only works nobody is looking. Make somebody look automatically every month. The system 4, the optimization sprint. For all 3, schedule a dedicated cost optimization sprint once per quarter, not a meeting. Actual sprint with tickets, with owners, with a definition of done. Here's the key insight about status quo bias. It is not that your team don't care about cost. It is that cost optimization always loses to feature development in the day-to-day prioritization battle. A dedicated sprint removes it from the competition. It gives cost work protected time. And protected time is the only reliable antidote to the status quo. The reframe for your team. One last thing before I give you the summary. When you bring this to your team, and I want you to bring this to your team, do not frame it as we have been doing things wrong. Frame it exactly like this. Our brain has a feature called status quo bias. It kept our ancestors alive by making change feel risky. It is a good feature for survival. It is an expensive feature for AWS build. We are not going to fight our brains. We are going to build systems that make the right choice the default choice, so our brain can relax. That reframe does 3 things. It removes shames. Nobody feels blamed. It makes the solution feel structural rather than personal, and it positions cost optimization as working with human nature, not against it, which is exactly what it is. Let me give you the summary. The status quo bias is the cognitive tendency to prefer the current state of affairs over change, even when change is objectively better. In AWS, it shows up as default settings, nobody questioned. Instance, nobody right-sized. Storage tiers, nobody changed. And schedules, nobody configured. It cost the average Series A digital health startup between $40,000 and $60,000 per year. You fight it with 4 systems: the default challenge meeting quarterly, the optimization checklist in every infrastructure PR, the anomaly alert automated and free, the optimization sprint once per quarter. You do not need willpower to reduce your AWS bill. You need the system that makes the right choice the path of least resistance. Because when the right choice is the default choice, even status quo bias works in your favor. If this was useful, please subscribe. Every week I cover one neuroscience principle and one cloud cost pattern and show you exactly how they connect. Next week, I'm going to talk about sunk cost fallacy and why your team keeps running infrastructure nobody uses because we already paid to build it. One more thing, I am currently offering free 30 minutes AWS cost reviews for digital health startup. You share your AWS Cost Explorer screenshot, nothing sensitive, nothing proprietary. I identify your top 3 cost waste patterns and estimate the monthly savings. No pitch, no obligation, no strings, just a second pair of eyes from someone who has spent years studying exactly this. The link to apply is in the description below. I'm only taking 5 companies this month, so if this sounds useful, fill it out today.